everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend our UnForm webinar today. My name is Brittany Herman. I'm a marketing specialist here at Aktion Associates, and I'll be moderating today's event. This webinar is designed to see a live demo of UnForm's business process automation tools. That way you can automate some of your processes and make things a little bit easier. We want you to use this as an opportunity to ask questions, so please feel free to use the Q&A feature during this event, and we'll have time to answer them at the end. And if a longer extended answer is needed, we will follow up with you. All attendee audio is muted today to provide the best user experience possible, so you will need to use the Q&A feature to ask a question. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to you shortly after the webinar ends. Let me introduce you to our presenter today, Paul Bushell. Paul is a sales executive from UnForm joining us today to walk through the product and give us a live demo along with some information about it. On today's agenda, we will be talking a little bit about Aktion and who we are. Then we'll go into UnForm and Paul will take over from there. And we'll be going through capturing some documents, data entry automation, doc flow, document routing. He'll go through a demo, and there will be that Q&A at the end. All right, before we jump into our topic, I will give you a little bit more information on who Aktion is. We are more than 220 employees with more than 6,500 customers. We are a national ERP software reseller and IT infrastructure provider, focused on architectural engineering and construction, and real estate distribution in the manufacturing industries. We have 2 company data centers, one here located where I am at headquarters in Toledo, Ohio. The other is at Charlotte, North Carolina. Aktion is number 16 on the top 100 VARs list, along with being a top top workplace in 2022. In the top right-hand corner there, you can see some of the recognitions, and for today especially, we do have a really long gold partner running ship with Infor. So with all that being said, I will pass it over to Paul and let him go through his presentation and demo for you all.
Thanks, Brittany. So I think probably most of you are probably familiar with UnForm and our print management solution. We've been around since 1988. We've been an Infor partner since I think 99. We've got a lot of installations around the world of our various solutions. I've got more than a couple thousand Infor customers. And what we're going to look at today works with all the various Infor solutions. So Cloud Suite, SX On-Prem, A+ Fax, works with all of them. And today, what we want to kind of focus on is how we can use our tools to help automate the business processes. And some of those processes are, can be relatively straightforward, simple things like, how do I file my signed proof of deliveries quickly and easily, all the way up to extracting data from a document, for example, a vendor or supplier invoice, and taking that data, reading the data off the document, turning it into an electronic transaction so that it can automate the data entry portion of the AP process. So again, some very simple automation tools to help you get stuff filed and stored so that it's easy to retrieve as needed, all the way up to getting stuff off a document and get a transaction entered into the ERP without having to do any data entry. And we'll also take a quick look at our doc flow capability, which allows you to route documents based on whatever your particular business process rules are. So it's completely configurable and can be built based around whatever your rules are. We'll look at a couple of the typical examples of how it's used today in accounts payable and kind of hopefully give you a feel for some of the things you can do with it. Again, we've got a variety of solutions. A lot of you are probably using our print management today that allows you to generate, professional forms of reports and deliver those via email, printers and fax still. If you've got folks still needing faxes, you can still do that. And then we've also got Cirrus Print, which is our cloud printing solution. So as you move your printing or your applications to the cloud, Cirrus Print makes it very easy to get that print output from the cloud to your existing printers. What we're going to look at, kind of focus on today, though, is we're going to look at Image Manager, which is the application that allows us to capture documents, externally generated documents that can be, supplier invoices, customer purchase orders, packing slips, those kinds of things. We use Image Manager to capture those documents and based on what we call a job definition, determine what needs to happen with it. And then we store those in the archive so that they're very easy to access when you need them. We can also use Image Manager, by the way, to push documents into IDM as well. So if you're using IDM, you have the option to push them into IDM. And then we're going to look at DocFlow. Again, this is the application we use to route documents. I think today what we'll look at, for an example, is expense invoices. So we'll take a look at how those can be routed for approvals prior to entry into your ERP. And we'll also take a look at a couple of examples of how we can capture documents with Image Manager, extract the information from those documents, and then send a transaction directly to your ERP to minimize the amount of data entry required to do that. I'm just going to go through a couple more slides real quick just to kind of explain conceptually how we do things and some of the terms and concepts we use. But first and foremost, UnForm is completely browser-based, so very easy to install and deploy. And again, the focus is on automation. What we're going to be looking at today is version 10 and up, and all everything we're doing today is available in version 10 and up. If you're on an earlier version, you would have to upgrade to be able to do some of the things we're going to look at. But the automation, again, the focus is to be able to fully index documents into our archive or, again, IDM with minimal, if any, data entry required. We can push them into a DocFlow for routing and approvals or signature capture or a variety of ways to use the DocFlow to move documents around. And then again, we can extract information from a document and format it based on whatever the target ERP requires. So it could be an XML bot, it could be an EDI file, CSV file, whatever it needs to be. So that data can be formatted again based on the target application's requirements. The automation starts with what we call inbound sources, and they're configurable based on on what needs to happen to a document. And those sources can be an email box, so we can monitor a mailbox, and you can also have aliases. So you could have a mailbox and aliases associated, so you could split documents up to different folks if needed. So we can monitor mailboxes, emails come in, we can pull the attachment off and process it based on the configuration of that particular source. And of course, you can also have directories as well set up to be monitored. So you can either scan documents to a specific directory and have them processed. You can drag and drop documents into a directory, and again, based on how that source is configured, we know what to do with those documents as they arrive. The jobs can be configured to either fully or partially automate a process depending on what it is and what information needs to be captured. We have the ability to look up data as well in your ERP or other applications. So as a document comes in, we can grab a piece of information off of that document and use that to find additional information that you may need to have to be able to store it and link it back to the other documents associated with the transaction. Or it could be a lookup to validate information that we've extracted from that document to make sure that the PO number, vendor number combination actually exists. We also have the ability, and I'll show you a real quick and easy job to do what we call click and fill. So you can click on a field and fill in a value. We can read barcodes. And again, once we've read that, if we need to, we can look up additional information from the ERP. And then we have some other capabilities built into the Image Manager as well. If it's a PDF that has a text layer on it, we can read that text off of that PDF without having to run an optical character recognition engine against it. So typically what we see today, if you're receiving invoices from vendors and suppliers via email. They're typically generated by an application that creates a PDF with text layer. In that example, we can read that text off of there, accurately 100% of the time. For documents that don't have that, we have a couple different levels of optical character recognition we can use to extract that information. And again, the idea is to get the information from the document using whatever particular tool we need to ensure that it's accurate and to minimize the amount of human interaction required to get the document processed. Today, we're going to take a quick look at a couple things. One is vendor invoice automation. We're going to look at order entry automation, and we'll look at approval and problem resolution routing as well. We'll show you a couple of other kind of simple jobs in the Image Manager used to capture and store and file documents, just to kind of build up on the various levels of automation that are possible. Let me screen share here. So to begin with, UnForm, again, is completely browser-based. And so it's easy to deploy. So once you've installed it, you can use the UnForm browser to get the documents and the other applications. But we've also got the ability to launch from different ERP inquiries. So we've got various capabilities we can apply based on the ERP to give you the ability to launch. The archive is where we store documents as they come in, and they're organized based on libraries, and those libraries are typically just logical groupings of documents based on a job function. So within accounts payable, you'd have an accounts payable library with all the documents typically associated with it. And then within there, once you found one end of the transaction, in this example, it would be a check that was captured as it was printed. And because we've got, on the remittance advice, we've got invoice numbers and PO numbers, we're able to link back to those documents that are also stored in UnForm. And from there, we can pull up copies of those. So from the check, I have the ability to pull up a copy of the invoice, the packing slip, and the purchase order. So it's my job to sign a check. All that backup I need to I may need to review is available directly from within the application there. And again, I'll show you in a minute. We also can launch from within the ERPs as well. So archiving is where we store the documents, link them together based on common indexing information. So regardless of how they're coming in, if they share PO numbers, invoice numbers, whatever that index information is, they're linked together so that once you found one end of a transaction, it's very easy to find it. Then within archive, this is where you configure our inbound sources. And again, the inbound source is where we're looking for documents. So if we look here, it can be a directory. And then based on the configuration of that source, I have the ability to say, hey, when documents hit, this is what they are, and this is what I want you to do. You can also have an email address. So as they come into an email address, again, you can configure it based on that particular email address, what it is you need to do to those particular documents as they come through. Then Image Manager is where we're processing those documents. So if it's coming in from an email address, let me, while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and send a batch of invoices to a monitored mailbox. And note, I've got 1, 2, 3, I've got 4 different invoices here. And as they process, they'll come in through Image Manager. And we'll see here that as they come in, I've got some that have check marks. That indicates that as they came in, we're able to validate the data on them, and everything came through just fine. Also note too that we had one document, it was a single PDF that had multiple invoices in it, we're able to split those out as they come in. So we know based on when that invoice number changes that we need to start a new document. So it'll do those things for you. Now, again, these check marks are used. What this indicates is that as this document came in, it passed all the validations. So everything we have said is required to be able to process that document was met. Typically, you would not see documents that are checked in this particular, in the image manager. They just flow through and go on to do whatever it is, we need to do with them. But these, we got a couple that failed what we call validations. And those validations could be any number of things. In this example, we've got an example of an invoice that came in and we detected that it was a duplicate. So we've already processed it once before. So this would remain in Image Manager as an exception. And so someone would come in and take a look at it and take whatever corrective action is necessary. Is it in fact a duplicate or not? So whatever corrective actions needed would take place there. And then some of these are also set up, in addition to just sending these in and filing them away, I've also set these up, let me see, to, in this example, I've got these set up so that it'll actually extract information. So it's going to pull the line detail off of these invoices along with the header information. And then from there, it will actually, let me grab a couple of these. I'm just going to do a handful for speed here. And then as these come through and finish, again, typically this would all happen behind the scenes. It would process these. It's going to, in addition to putting a copy of them into the archive and optionally into IDM, it's going to also, in this example, I've got these set up to actually come into the AP Invoice Center for SXE or Cloud Suite. So we were able to get the information off of those invoices and get them into the AP Invoice Center so that nobody had to actually manually enter those in. They've come in automatically, just like it would if it were an EDI transaction. So the ability to pull the data off of those documents, form it into a transaction, again, that's an example of some of the more advanced business process automation we can do. You can do the same thing with, this is an example of a inbound customer purchase order. Again, it's come in via email. We've got the inbound source configured to process inbound customer POs. It's going to pull the information off of here we need, header information, line detail information, and then as it goes in, it's going to, again, it's going to push it into, I've got this one set up to push into Cloud Suite. It's going to go, these actually go through the electronic transaction control center, and then based on how you configure the way you want it to work and actually generate an order in the system. You can also have it in this, in SX or CSD, you can have it create a quote order or a regular sales order, but you have some options. But again, the goal here is to bring those documents in, get the transaction created without anybody having to manually create it. And then some of the more simple jobs, if we look at this one. So this is what we call this is an example of a packing slip. So vendor packing slip comes in to the warehouse, they do the receiving, and you want to get that into the system so that's linked back to the, the invoice and the PO. So you have all the documents you need to do three-way matching issues available to you. So, and a lot of times the packing slips can be, they're not always the best cared for document. So they've been through a lot of hands. And so in some cases you may need to enter a PO number. And then in this example, because it's a decent looking document, I'm able to click on the PO number. It'll fill in my value here. And then we can use that value. Once we've got a PO number, we can go back, look up a vendor number, vendor name, and any other information we want to have associated with that document, so that once it's in the repository, it's easy to find. So again, that's kind of a couple different tools we use, the ability to enter a value and then look up additional information straight out of the ERP to make this process as quick and easy as possible. And of course, we have the ability to read a barcode as well. So you can use a combination of those technologies to do the same thing. So in this example, we can read the barcode, get a sales order number, and then look up additional information that we need to process that document and get it filed away in the into the archive. So Image Manager, again, that's the tool we're using to capture documents and the data within those documents. And then that data is used to index it in the system, link it back to other documents that share the same index information, and in some cases, extracting the data from those documents to turn it into electronic transactions to minimize the amount of data entry required to get something into the system. And then we also wanted to take a quick look at our doc flow capability. So typical uses for this we see are, accounts payable is like a typical good example of how you can use this. And, the way it works kind of depends on which ERP you're using. But, for most folks, when you're processing expense type invoices, overhead invoices that aren't, inventory purchases, it typically goes through some sort of approval process prior to being entered into the system. So, it could be based on, a warehouse location. It could be based on departments. So you may have an IT, someone in IT has to sign off on those. It could be someone, managing the fleet that has to sign off on repairs and things like that. So with expense invoices, they're typically routed for approval. And in some cases, someone needs to indicate, a GL account that needs to be coded to as well. So as they come in, this flow is based on dollar value. So as the dollar value of an invoice goes up, it goes to a different role. So in this example, it's set up so that a branch manager has authority up to X dollar amount. Over that, it needs to go to the controller. And once it's exceeded the controller's threshold, it's going to go to the CEO or CFO. So that's kind of, an example of one of the expense type routings we see. So as the document comes in, right, they get an alert that they have documents to review, an email alert, and with a link, and they can pop right into the DocFlow application here. The documents in here, if they need to add attachments to it, a copy of an email or something, you can do that. And then the Actions tab is where you go in and determine what's next with this particular document. Again, this is completely configurable based on whatever your process is. So within here, you can, approve it, deny it, whatever it is you need to do. If you want to indicate a GL account that you want it to be coded to, of course, you can put that there as well if needed. And then once you've hit save, excuse me, and you can also add notes here as well too. So it's invoiced or whatever the note is, and then we're going to log and track everything that happens to it as it's in here too. So if you need an audit trail, if you need to go back and figure out what's going on, you have a complete audit trail to do that. So once I hit say this one's approved and ready to go, I'll hit forward, and it'll move it on to the next step in this particular flow. So in this example, we just said, yeah, that one's ready to go. So it's going to alert accounting that, hey, this one's been approved. It's ready for data entry. So again, kind of a typical expense invoice routing for that. With trade invoices, again, depending on which ERP you're using, you can route the trade invoices for problem resolution. So, with some of the ERPs, you want to do the three-way match ahead of time. So you can use DocFlow to facilitate that, help you do the three-way matching ahead of time. And then with, with SX and CSD, AP Invoice Center will do that three-way match. So, if it were to fail, then you'd want to route it back through. So, again, trade invoices are the flow there is kind of based on which ERP you're using. So that's the way that one would work. And I think that was what we wanted to get through today. Is again, it's just kind of a very high level overview of some of the capabilities of UnForm and how we can help you automate different processes within your business. And the goal here is, minimize data entry so that you can focus on, problem resolution or, more important tasks like, maybe driving revenue. So that's the whole goal there, is to help, automate those routine kind of transactions so that you can focus on those things that need more attention. Let me back up over here. So, and then Brittany, I think we're about ready for questions.
Yep, I will go ahead and look and see if there's any questions in there. While I do that, I will also say on the user end, there is a related content area. So if anyone that showed up today in the audience wants to go home and take some of the brochures with them or download the PowerPoint, feel free to do that. That is why we give those to you guys, because we want you to use them if you want them. So thought I would say that. It looks like we do have a few questions and we have a little bit of time. So I will go ahead and get those queued so we can answer them. All right, it looks like somebody's asking, is there any additional setup required in their ERP if they're looking to use UnForm?
So it depends on what you're doing, but for some of the things that we looked at, the simpler, indexing type applications, no. But if you want to automate the data entry, transaction stuff, then yeah, there can be. So, when you're talking about inbound invoices, you have to have, part numbers cross-referenced and unit of measure stuff set up. So all that stuff, you need to set up ahead of time because, you want to make sure that, that the part numbers coming in on an invoice, match something that's set up in your ERP or just it won't be automatic. So that's some of the things you have to do. A unit of measure, make sure that you've got, you're buying unit of measure, stocking units of measure, those things are set up appropriately. If you have to do unit conversions, those need to be set up. So yeah, you need to make sure that you have those kinds of things, data synchronization with suppliers and, customer part number cross references, those kinds of things need to be set up to be able to automate the data entry stuff.
Awesome. It looks like we have just one more here. So I will also push that up to the slide area. It looks like, does Image Manager only use OCR? Oh,
well, no. So it does have the ability, OCR capabilities, and there's actually two different levels. There's one that's built in that comes with the system called Tesseract that does a pretty good job, but then we also have an optional AI-driven OCR engine. So if you've got some documents that the Tesseract engine doesn't read very well, the AI-driven engine does an extremely good job with using that. But again, you only need to use OCR on documents that require it. So if they're images, something like that. If it's a PDF with a text layer, which is what we typically see with documents coming in via email, then no, you don't have to use an OCR engine. We just read the text directly off that PDF, and that that we can do that accurately 100% of the time. So no, you only have to use OCR on documents that require it.
Awesome. And it looks like that was all the questions. With that, I will say thank you for you all joining today. If there would be any further questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to your account manager and we will help you follow up with those. I want to ask Paul if there's anything else you want to say.
Well, no, but thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your Aktion account rep or me if you have some specific questions that I can help you with.
Awesome. Thank you again, everyone, for joining, and I hope you all have a great day.